Schubert to accompany the song Arise, Arise, My Lady Sweet, Arise in Shakespeare's play Cymbeline. We thought it made a delightful introduction to our study of the first letter of the alphabet, the vowel A.
As all the vowels in English are much more complicated than the consonants, I'm afraid that starting with A is like being taught to swim by being thrown in at the deep end of the swimming pool.
But don't worry, we shall not let you sink. We have some very able instructors to help you not only stay afloat, but swim confidently with grace and elegance.
We have divided our study of the letter A into 4 main sections: the short A sounds, the long A sounds, a number of common word endings in which A features with many pitfalls for the unwary, and finally the sounds of A when it is in particular combinations with other letters, both consonants and vowels.
I've asked Pandora and Bertie to take us through the first section. Pandora and Rachel will do the second. Bertie and Pandora will join us again to do the third. And for the fourth we'll have Bertie and Andy. So, without further preamble, let's plunge in.
What branch of any bank can manage to pay all its staff that large reward? That short sentence has no less than 7 different pronunciations of the letter A, and this is before we introduce combinations of A with other vowels.
Let's start with the simple short A sound of bank, which we'll call short A1.
For the simple short A1 sound, as in cat, sat or mat, you begin with your mouth slightly open and with your tongue relaxed, just behind, but preferably not touching, your bottom front teeth. You then bring the air from the back of your throat and at the same time drop your chin straight down.
Don't push your chin forward at all.
You must feel the air against the back of your palate, the roof of your mouth, and it should make a nice crisp sound. Listen and watch carefully as we make the sound and say the following words.
Ah, add, bad, mad, cat, fat, mat, sat,
Ham, hand, frank, caftan, rattan.
Now it's your turn to practice making the short A1 sound and saying those words exactly as you heard them. Now here's a short sentence in which every A has the simple short A1 sound. It's a variation on the old favourite, the cat sat on the mat. Watch my lips carefully as you listen. Frank's fat cat sat on Pat's flat black rattan mat.
That's quite a mouthful, I'm afraid. The short A1 sound itself is easy to produce, but pronouncing a word in which it follows consonants like R and L is harder.
But we'll have plenty of practice for such combinations as the course progresses. For the time being, just do your best as you tell us how Frank's fat cat sat on Pat's flat black rattan mat. Our next A sound, short A2, is the sound of the second A in the words balance and palace. The first A has the simple short A1 sound, and I'd like you to listen again to the difference. Balance, palace, balance, palace.
This short A2 sound is also how the letter A is, or at least should be, pronounced when it is the indefinite article. A balance, a palace. I said should be because it is so often mispronounced these days, as we shall discuss later.
The starting mouth shape for the short A2 sound is much the same as for the short A1. You have your mouth slightly and comfortably open, and your tongue relaxed. But this time, the front of your tongue should be touching the back of your bottom front teeth.
The main difference in making the short A2 sound is that when you bring the air from the back of your throat, you do not drop your chin as you do for the short A1 sound.
In fact, you're usually closing your mouth as you make the unstressed short A2, ready to pronounce whatever consonant follows it, either in the same word or in a following one.
Watch and listen again to the two sounds of A in balance and palace.
Balance, palace, balance, palace. Did you see how the chin is dropped and held in for the short A1, then lifted up and moved very slightly forward for the short A2, ready for the following consonant?
And when you are practicing the short A2 sound by itself, as in the indefinite article, it can help at first to jerk your head up a little.
Watch and listen again as we make the two sounds and say those two words. A, a, a. Balance, palace.
A balance, another palace.
And did you hear that the vowel E in another had exactly the same sound as short A2?
Now you practice making the short A1 and short A2 sounds and say those words exactly as you heard them.
Now listen and watch carefully as I say some words, each of which has short A1 followed by short A2. Applicant, arrogant, animal.
Rampant. Canada. Now it's your turn. Repeat those words exactly as we said them. Now, I expect you're wondering why the girl's name Ivy was put in brackets after the heading for short A2.
The reason is that this sound is technically known as the indefinite vowel, and as every vowel in English can make this sound, it seemed appropriate to give a name to someone we shall meet so often. So, I-V becomes Ivy.
But though we are constantly meeting Ivy, she is a modest, calm and unflappable person whom you'll never find in a stressed syllable.
Listen to these identical sounds of the vowels in italics in the following words. Petal, letter, politics, factor, focus, pyjamas.
They are all Ivy in different dresses.
We'll come to these others in good time. For the present, we'll stick to the letter A.
Listen now to another sentence packed with examples of the first two A sounds we have practiced so far, the stressed syllables being underlined.
Arrogant, applicants, angered, Commandant Andrews.
Now it's your turn to tell us that arrogant applicants angered Commandant Andrews. Say the sentence, first with the help of the marked text, then reading from the unmarked version.
We'll put both versions on the practice screen for you. Make sure you can say it correctly from the unmarked text before moving on.
You will find that the short A2 sound is almost always the sound of the letter A in the word ending AL, when this syllable is unstressed, as is usually the case, and the same is true for the adverbial ending ALLY.
Listen to some examples of words with these endings. Every short A2 is shown in italics, and the stressed syllables are underlined.
Animal, arrival, funeral, imperial, literal.
Literally, madrigal, material, materially.
Medal, metal, oral, petal, plural, rival.
sandal, scandal, scandalous, survival, serial, trivial.
There are very few words in which the AL ending is stressed, and in these rare cases it has the short A1 sound, as in canal, cabal, and halal.
Note too that in canal and cabal, the unstressed first syllable is the short A2 ivy sound, whereas halal usually has both syllables stressed and both have the short A1 sound. Now you say the following words.
I hope you remember that the AL ending of canal has the short A1 sound.
Unfortunately, while you can see and hear us, we cannot see and hear you. But remember that you can register with our live, face-to-face online tutorial program if you want some special help at any time.
Other unstressed word endings like the AR of mortar, the ARD of Richard, the AH of Jeremiah, the AS of bias, and the ARY of library also have the short A2 ivy sound. Listen to a longer list of examples.
Cougar, hanger, vicar.
Isaiah, Jeremiah, pariah,
Briar, liar, peculiar, jugular, mortar, standard, Richard.
diary, friary, library, mortuary, statuary, bias. You will have heard that the R in AR, when it ends a word, as in vicar, liar, or peculiar, is almost or completely silent, just like the final H in pariah and Jeremiah.
The R becomes more noticeable only when a following word begins with a vowel, as in the phrase, a peculiar aspect of a jugular artery. Now you try saying this.
The letter R is a tricky customer, and we'll deal with him in detail later on. But it is useful to note things like this as we go along.
Pronunciation is best learnt through constant reinforcement by repeated hearing, watching and practicing in different contexts.
The ARY word endings need special study, and we'll give them a special section to themselves later on. While the short A2 ivy sound is, or should be, clearly heard in words like mortuary and statuary, it becomes much weaker in an adjective like voluntary, and in the adverb voluntarily it is so feeble that it is virtually non-existent.
We have already noted how short A1 is always stressed, and short A2, like all the other vowels in which Ivy dresses herself, is never stressed. Good examples are animal and canal, in which the stressed A, underlined, is short A1, and the unstressed A, in italics, is short A2. Now let's see how this determination by stress works with the words that, at, and.
In the case of that, the stress depends usually on whether the word is being used as a pronoun or as a conjunction.
As a pronoun, it is usually stressed and has the short A1 sound, as in that man's fat or stop that man.
But as a conjunction, it is unstressed and has the short A2 ivy sound, as in I said that he should stop, or I said that that man is fat. That second little sentence having the unstressed conjunction followed by the stressed pronoun.
The words at and are rarely stressed, but when they are pronounced with the short A1, as I've just said them, rather than the usual short A2 ivy sound.
Listen while we demonstrate this by pretending to be shocked and outraged at what we've just heard from a friend on the telephone about something dreadful that a man invited to a girl's party had said to her. The underlined words are stressed and the italicized words are unstressed.
Did that fool really say that? What did he think he was at, saying that to her at that party? And when she had been trying to be so nice to him? That's fantastic. Can you believe it? I thought that he had more sense than that, and I'm shocked.
Now you practice saying this and copy that indignant intonation exactly. Use the marked text first, and when you feel sufficiently confident, say it using the following unmarked version.
As with the word that, the verb have and its different forms has and had can sometimes have the short A1 sound and sometimes short A2. And again, it is mainly a question of stress or emphasis.
Listen to the following little dialogue in which, as before, the stressed examples are underlined and the unstressed ones are shown in italics.
Have you got a book?
I have, thanks. I've also got a bottle, but I haven't a glass. But I'd rather not have been here at all.
I have to say I have been happy here.
Now you repeat that conversation. The rule is as follows. The verb always has short A1.
When the verb and subject are inverted to make a question, as in the first lines, have you? And it is the same with all the other persons. For example, has she? Have they? Had the builders?
When the verb is emphatic, as in B's reply to A's question, I have, thanks, and in the final have of our little dialogue, where A is contradicting B.
When it is followed by the abbreviated negative, as in hasn't, haven't, and hadn't.
And when have to is used in the sense of must, as in I have to say, which could equally well be expressed by I must say.
The verb usually has the short A2 ivy sound when it is forming the perfect or pluperfect tense of another verb, as distinct from indicating possession. Listen to this rather sad sentence.
I have been sending her letters for years, but she has never replied.
But the short A2 ivy sound is not very common in the verb have, simply because where it would otherwise be used, it is so often replaced with the abbreviated forms. In conversation, you would more often say, I've been ill, or he's been ill, rather than I have been ill, or he has been ill, unless you wish to put special stress on the severity of the illness by saying, I have been ill, or he has been ill, in which case, as you heard, the sound is short A1. Let's do a sentence to practice this.
I've been, you've been, and she's been. They've not been because we've not taken them. And they really have to go, haven't they?
All those abbreviated forms, except the last, the inverted question form, could be replaced by has or have, with the short A2 sound. Watch and listen as we illustrate this, the stressed short A1 sounds being underlined.
I have been, you have been, and she has been. But they have not been because we have not taken them. And they really have to go, haven't they?
Now you say those two sentences, the first having the abbreviated forms, the second the long forms. The abbreviated forms are more likely to be used in everyday speech, but there is nothing wrong with using the unabbreviated forms throughout, with the short A2 ivy sound for the unstressed words and the short A1 sound for the underlined ones that are stressed.
Except again for the inverted question form, for though have they not is technically correct, it would never be said in this context.
Another word in which the A can be short A1 or short A2 is as, but it is much more frequently the latter, the ivy sound. Again, it is short A1 only on the rare occasions when it has some emphasis, as in that truest of proverbs, as ye sow, so shall ye also reap.
As you will find out for yourself when you reap the rewards of doing this course, if you persevere and work really hard at it.
Now listen to another sentence in which every A is short A2.
As soon as I knew that she had gone, I left.
Now you tell us what you did as soon as you knew she'd gone.
Stress, or lack of it, similarly governs whether can and shall have the short A1 or the short A2 ivy sound. And as with has and have, it is always stressed in questions when the subject and verb are inverted, and also when it is emphasized, as in the emphatic reply to the following question.
Can you go or not?
I can.
This is like the emphasis on the word have when A contradicted B's view of their experience. B says he has not been happy there, but A says he has.
The long form, more formal or very emphatic negative, cannot, also has the short A1 sound, but the abbreviated negative can't has a different sound altogether, the long A2 sound that we shall be practicing shortly.
Otherwise, the predominant sound of can is short A2, as in I can come at once, in which both letters A have the ivy sound.
Listen now to a silly sentence with a mixture of the two sounds, the short A2 being in italics and the stressed short A1 underlined.
I can ask if Duncan's pelican can, but I cannot be sure he'll tell me the truth, can I?
The rules for the pronunciation of shall basically follow those for can, but there is a particular problem over its correct usage, which has been corrupted in recent years.
In the first person singular and plural, shall is the correct form for the simple future tense, as in I or we shall go to bed soon. It is not stressed, and its vowel sound is short A2.
With the second and third persons, however, it expresses determination against opposition, real or assumed. You shall go to bed, whether you like it or not. In this usage, it is stressed and has the short A1 sound.
Unfortunately, sloppiness has crept into this usage in recent years, with the result that many people now use an unstressed will with the first person for the simple future, though I will and we will should be used only to imply determination and be stressed. I or we will go, whether you like it or not. I think there are various reasons for the creeping change.
The first is simply ignorance. Children are not taught the difference and therefore lose an important subtlety in our language.
A second reason is just laziness. The word will is easier to pronounce than shall after I and we.
And the colloquial abbreviated forms I'll and we'll, especially the latter, actually sound much more like the word will than the word shall, which is the one they really represent.
Another reason is that in everyday conversation we are used to hearing and using the colloquial abbreviated form ul so much more than the full forms shall and will when we are using the ordinary future tense, that it is easy to overlook the fact, even if one knows it in the first place, that I'll and we'll stand for I shall and we shall, not I will and we will, which would imply determination against opposition.
Even if we're speaking and writing correctly, we say and write will much more often for the future tense simply because, however egotistical we may be, there are in speech and writing many more instances of the second and third persons for which will is the correct future form than of the first person.
The future form shall is only for I and we, whereas it is will for all of the second and third persons. I and we shall go, but you, he, she, it, Jim, the car, or they will go.
The last reason, I'm afraid, is, as so often, the baleful example of American usage, which floods our ears through all the American films we watch and songs we listen to.
Though the Scottish and Irish dialects also mess things up.
Especially as the United Kingdom seems to have been dominated by a disproportionate amount of Scottish politicians.
Not to mention a Prime Minister whose performance has been as uninspiring as his diction.
The great lexicographer, Fowler, followed the Oxford English Dictionary in castigating the misuse of I and we will for the simple future as a mark of Scottish, Irish, provincial or extra-British idiom.
And in Fowler's day, failing to observe the distinction could be dangerous as well as incorrect, as the following apocryphal story illustrates.
A foreign gentleman visiting London leant too far over the parapet of London Bridge to try to catch his hat, which had blown off in the wind, and fell into the River Thames.
Being unable to swim and seeing a passer-by on the embankment, he cried out,
I will die, and no one shall save me.
As bad luck would have it, the passer-by was none other than Fowler himself, a man whose courtesy was matched only by his erudition in matters grammatical, and who, not wishing to thwart what he understood to be the drowning man's evident determination to commit suicide, politely ignored him and walked on.
The battle to restore the correct usage may be nearly lost, but it's a pity, and we encourage you to retain or reinstate it in your own speech and writing.
In colloquial speech, the abbreviated forms I'll, you'll, we'll, etc. disguise any misuse because they are equally applicable to shall and will. But in formal speech and in writing, it is best to know your will from your shall.
And now that we've got all that off our chests, we shall summarise the correct usage as follows.
The simple future forms for the first person singular and plural are I shall and we shall, and like have and can, they usually have the unstressed short A2 sound.
Except when the verb and pronoun are inverted in the question form, when shall I go and shall we go, like have we met and can I go, have the stressed short A1 sound.
When, however, determination is being expressed, the personal pronouns change their partners and we use I will and you shall, each word now being stressed, and shall has the short A1 sound.
One might have hoped that the shortest word in the English language, the indefinite article, which is simply the letter A, would be uncomplicated, but sadly it is now heading the league table of mispronunciations, especially by ignorant politicians, television broadcasters and others who should know better.
Instead of using the short A2 ivy sound, which it should almost always have, people are increasingly using a long A1, particularly when it is followed by a word containing a long A sound. For example, I went to a play. You didn't. You went to a play. Now you say this.
There is no excuse but ignorance or laziness for pronouncing the indefinite article A with a long A sound, and giving it an emphasis that its very name, the indefinite article, confirms it should never have.
Not only is it wrong to stress the indefinite article, but it detracts from the emphasis and importance of the noun it is attached to.
As Shakespeare said, the play's the thing. You are going to a play.
The absurdity of lengthening the indefinite article is obvious if you are going to an island instead, as no one would dream of pronouncing this Ain Island with the indefinite article lengthened so that it rhymes with insane.
There is often confusion about when to use the A and AN forms of the indefinite article, but fortunately there are unambiguous rules for this.
The A form is used when it precedes a word beginning with a sounded consonant, or with a vowel or vowel combination that has the sound of the consonant W,
As in the word one,
or the sound of the consonant Y.
as in the U of use and the EU combination in Europe or eulogy.
Listen to an example illustrating all these cases.
A eulogy at a European funeral has a use, but not such a one as this.
The AN form is used when it precedes a word beginning with all other vowel sounds or with silent H, but not sounded H. We say a hospital, but an hour. Here's an example to practice. Listen.
An ambulance will take Alan to a hospital in an hour.
Don't worry too much for now about the sounded and silent H, as we'll deal with it fully when we get to that letter. It causes lots of problems, especially in some English dialects, as well as for the French and many other speakers of English as a second language. For now, just repeat that sentence about an ambulance coming to take Alan to a hospital in an hour's time.
We have now practiced the two main short A sounds, but there are others which are very different, and we'll look at these less common ones now before going on to the long A sounds.
The short A3 sound is what we hear in the word any, and in its compounds like anyone, anything, anywhere, anytime, and anyhow, and in the words many and says.
It is the simple short E sound. It can be made with no obvious external change in the mouth shape we use for short A1, and you similarly drop your chin slightly. Watch and listen. Axe, X, axe, X.
The difference is in the way you produce the air. The sound for short A3 is not made as far back in the throat as it is for short A1. You feel the air against the top of your palate, only a little behind the centre. Listen again very carefully now, as I alternate the two sounds. Ant, any, ant, any. Now you practice saying those words.
Now listen again to our main examples of short A3 words.
Any, anyone, anything, anywhere, anytime, anyhow, many, says.
And we can add London's great river, the Thames. Now you say all those short A3 words, including the River Thames, with its silent H.
Now let's go on safari for a practice sentence in which every word contains one or more of our first three short A sounds.
Alan says that many animals attacked that camp, and any man standing anywhere around.
Now you tell us about Alan's experience on safari when many animals attacked that camp and any man standing anywhere around it. Practice it first with the help of the markings. Then try reading it aloud from the unmarked text.
Our next A sound, short A4, is the one we hear in the word ending AGE in words like baggage and manage, the final E being silent, of course.
The first A in each of these words is the simple short A1, but the second has an unstressed sound that is somewhere between the full short I sound of the first letter in image and the short A2 ivy sound we hear in the unstressed indefinite article when we say, for example,
A village. A village.
It's the same sound we get with the letter E in the second syllable of wicked or pitted, or in the first syllable of event and result, and it is always unstressed.
Some phonetic dictionaries treat the two vowel sounds of image as being the same, but this is wrong, as the better ones confirm.
The short A4 sound of the second syllable of image is certainly closer to the I sound that we hear in the first syllable of that word than it is to the short A2 of the second A in canvas, but it is not the same.
For one thing, it is not as sharp and crisp, and this is not simply a matter of stress. Listen again. Image.
Now listen to the word manager, which has the short A1 sound, followed by short A4, and ends with the ivy sound, made here by the E in the ER ending. Listen again. Manager.
You can get to the short A4 sound by starting as though you were making the ivy sound, but stretching your lips very slightly sideways, with the back of your tongue held a bit higher, and making the air come from further back in your mouth.
Conversely, you can get to it by making the short I sound of in without pulling in your chin or widening and drawing back your lips as much as you do for that sound.
Watch and listen again carefully, the relevant sound being in italics. Image, manage, event.
But before we ask you to practice this, let's look ahead and see how to make the soft G sound, which is made soft by the silent E which follows it.
It comes from the very front of the mouth.
You protrude your lips as for a cartoon kiss, and press the front of your tongue up to the ridge of your palate, just behind and above your top front teeth.
You produce the air from behind where your tongue is pressed against your palate, and at the same time you drop your chin and bring your tongue down to behind your lower teeth.
I'm afraid it is difficult and long-winded to explain in words, and that is why we're so lucky to have the film, so that you can see the mouth shapes as well as hearing the sounds. Watch carefully now as I make the soft G sound. J, J, J.
And now we'll put these two sounds together to make the sound of the whole AGE suffix, as in manage. Watch and listen very carefully as I do this, starting with the short A4 sound, which comes from the back of the mouth, and ending with soft G, which comes from the very front of the mouth, behind the top front teeth. Idge, itch, manage, manage.
And now we'll have the person who does the managing, the manager. As you drop your chin to make the soft G sound, you automatically begin an ivy sound, which you simply complete to pronounce the ER ending, the final weak R sound being little more than an ivy, as we've discussed, unless followed by a vowel, as in manageress. Listen again now. Man, manage, manager.
Man, manage, manager. Now you say those words exactly as I did.
I hope you agree that it's not as difficult in practice as it may have seemed when we tried to explain in words how to make the sounds. Watch and listen now to some more examples of words with short A1 in the first syllable and short A4 in the second, including some that we've already had.
Bandage, cabbage, damage.
Language, manage, passage.
Package, ravage, savage, salvage.
Carriage, marriage, miscarriage, undercarriage, foliage.
And before you try these, note that in the words in the last group, those ending in IAGE, the letter I is silent, except in foliage, which keeps the I sound and provides a good example of the difference between this and the short A4 sound.
Now you say those examples of words with unstressed short AGE endings. Now listen to a little sentence to practice short A4.
Babbage managed to damage the packaged marriage images.
I bet old Babbage got into trouble for that. Now you tell us about his managing to damage the package of marriage images.
And now let's have another sentence from our safari to practice all the first 4 short A sounds we have studied so far. Listen carefully.
A manager says Alan lacked camera images and had imagined that many savage animals had attacked that camp.
Now you tell us about the manager's opinion that Alan had only imagined savage animals attacking the camp. As usual, practice this sentence with the help of the marked text first. Then try it again from the plain version.
And before we leave short A4, please remember that like the short A2 Ivy sound, it is never found in a stressed syllable.
You will have seen and heard how the short A4 in image changed to short A1 when the vowel became stressed in the past tense, imagined.
Our last short A sound, short A5, is where A has a short O sound, as in want.
It is another oddity in English pronunciation, and it is confined to relatively few words, but some of them are much used. For example, what, want, and watch.
The sound is easy to make. Just open your mouth, keeping it relaxed, and let your tongue lie against the bottom of your mouth with its tip behind your bottom gums, but the back pressed against the back of your palate.
Do not push your lips forward or widen your mouth at all.
The sound is produced by air from the back of the palate as you drop your jaw slightly, and it can help to nod your head as you do it while you're practicing. Watch as I do it. On, want, watch.
Now you say those words.
Now listen carefully to some more examples, the short A5 sound being marked by italics where there is more than one letter A in a word.
Squabble, swab, squad, quad, wad, waddle, waffle, waft, quaff.
Squalid, qualify, quality, swallow, wallet.
Swamp, swan, quandary, squander, wander, quantify, quantity, quantum, want.
Swap, squash, wash, wasp, quarrel, warrant, warrior, wrath, squat, swat, what, watch, what, Watson, yacht.
Now you practice saying those words.
You will have noticed that in all those words, except for that strange word yacht, short A5 is preceded by the sound made by W, whether made by that letter or by QU. Now listen to a little sentence in which every A is short A5.
We watched squat waddling Watson swallowing quantities of squashed waffles, then wandering off to wash.
Now you tell us about this unappealing character.
And now, let's return to the safari camp for a sentence in which every word has at least one of our 5 short A sounds. Listen.
Anyone watching as maddened animals savagely attacked that camp's baggage badly wanted a camera.
It must have been frustrating to see such a spectacle without having your camera with you.
Especially if you'd left it with the baggage in the camp that was being attacked by savage animals.
Now you have a go at this sentence, using the marked text first, then the following unmarked version.
The common word was needs a special note too.
Usually, it is not emphasised and has the short A2 ivy sound, as in the sentence, I was going out. But when occasionally it is stressed, it qualifies for a place in the list of short A5 words, as in, oh dear, I was stupid.
And here's another example, where John emphatically denies that he never intended to go out.
You weren't going to go out at all, were you?
I was.
And now for a sentence to practice these and other short A sounds. Every short A5 is shown in italics. Listen and watch my lips very carefully.
Yes, watch is one of those odd words.
Watch what happens when anyone wants to wander away.
Now you say this.
And the last A in that sentence, the second A in the word away, leads us nicely to the first of the long A sounds, long A1.
But before we attack the long A sounds, I'm sure you both need and deserve a little break. When we continue, you'll find Pandora and Rachel ready to take us through the long A sounds.